My name is Robin Lake. I'm with the Center on Reinventing Public Education. We're a nonpartisan research center at the University of Washington. In my view, charter schools are essential to the most important school district reforms at play today. And this is especially true in some of the major urban districts, the mega districts that we think about, that people had largely given up hope on in the past. They had given up hope that reforms would ever overcome decades of pretty dismal school performance and graduation rates and dropout. This wasn't the case even a few years ago. Most districts at that point had either ignored charter schools, hoping that they would be basically a passing fad, go away, or tried to marginalize their impact by lobbying for state charter school caps or limited funding. But district leaders are coming to realize now that charter schools have an important and, I would argue, in many ways, a game-changing role to play in district reform. And let me give you just a few examples. In New Orleans, 60% of all public schools are now charter schools. At first, this was basically a practicality. After Hurricane Katrina, charters run by nonprofits were the first schools that were able to open quickly enough after the storm to serve local students. But now the Recovery School District is actually turning district-run schools into charters because they're looking at the performance and realizing the charters are simply outperforming district schools. So now 76% of charter schools in the Recovery School District were considered last year academically acceptable or better, compared to only 15% of the district-run schools. In Denver, successful college prep charter schools now take the place of district schools that failed students for decades. The superintendent there doesn't think of his job as running a school system. He thinks of himself as running a system of schools or a portfolio of schools. His job is to get the best schools possible for the kids in Denver, and he doesn't particularly care what they're called. In New York City, district officials say that after having repeatedly tried and failed to fix their worst schools, they have no choice now but to turn to charter schools. The district officials actually have lobbied the state legislature to go ahead and lift the statewide cap so that they can replace more failing schools. So these district leaders all have different reforms in the specifics, but they have one thing in common, and that is they believe that their work is too urgent and too important to close off any viable options. They see charter schools not as a threat, but as an opportunity to overcome school system inertia. They see charters as a way to give them the political leverage they need. So instead of trying to compete with charters, they're trying to co-opt them. So here are 4 specific things that charter schools offer smart districts. First, access to new talent. District leaders know they can't fix their public schools without great people. And charter schools tend to attract entrepreneurial teachers, principals, central office folks who wouldn't otherwise choose to work in public education. Second, they offer the opportunity to start schools from scratch. So they find it's much easier to close low-performing schools if they can announce that a charter school with a proven model will take its place. And it's much easier to open a new school rather than to try to fix a school with a persistent, toxic culture of failure. Charter schools, third, offer proof that things can be better. So the proof point that Dr. Moskowitz was just talking about. The presence of even one charter school that's sending all of its poor and minority students to college can really be a game changer for an urban superintendent. And it can take away excuses the district schools can't do better. It can inspire people who want to make politically difficult decisions. And fourth, charter schools can create urgency to resolve differences. So a healthy charter school sector and competition can actually act as a common enemy that can bring district management and unions to the table to renegotiate new contracts that work better for students in all schools. So there are many examples like this of district leaders who are getting past the charter label and are using charters to do what they wanted to do anyway. But I know that many of you hear often from school district leaders who are losing students to charter schools and see that as a threat. In response to those complaints, many states have capped charter school growth to protect districts, and others have tried to ease the financial pain. And at the same time, policymakers wonder why charter schools aren't causing widespread school improvement. But that can't happen if states continue to protect districts from competition. So if we want charter schools to be a tool for district reform beyond just a handful of forward-thinking districts, it's time to level the financial playing field so that charters have access to decent facilities and an equal share of public funding. And it's time to stop protecting school districts with arbitrary statewide caps. It's also true, though, that policymakers have one more obligation if the charter sector is to be taken seriously by district leaders. Too many charter schools, as we've heard this morning, are mediocre, and many are performing very badly. Lawmakers should insist that states and districts take performance oversight very seriously and close down charter schools that aren't effective. And they need to promote and replicate more high-performing charter schools, as this bill tries to do. To close, then, the strategy of chartering is increasingly seen by school districts as an opportunity to create the schools they need. But that very promising strategy is unlikely to happen more than just a handful of districts that we're hearing about today until states commit to fair competition and, probably more importantly, performance-based accountability. Thank you.